In the last video, we looked at how to pull in our JSON feed from the Treehouse site and store it in our database. We then took the extra step of using JSON to code to turn our JSON feed into an object that we could easily parse. Now, let's go ahead and start looking at how to parse this data. What we'll do is come into our Options page wrapper, scroll down below our post box for most recent badges, and right here we're going to create a new post box to start displaying our JSON feed while we're working on beginning to extract the data that we want. We'll go ahead and copy the beginning markup for a post box, add it here, close the inside div, and then close the post box div. Now, inside of here, we'll use the pre and co tags to wrap the output of our JSON feed, which we'll do by using var dump and then passing in the profile with the variable name treehouse profile. Close up our pre and co tags, and then let's come over and see what this looks like in our browser. We can see that we have our Mike the Frog user information displaying, and when we refresh our page, we should see below this box the output of our entire JSON feed. Let's start up at the top and look at how to get a simple thing like Mike the Frog's name. Because this feed is an object, we have a pretty simple way in PHP of pulling out the information we want. Let's come back into our code, and right above where we output the profile feed, let's try to begin extracting some basic information, starting with the name of the person. We'll add in a paragraph tag. Then we'll create a PHP code block and echo out our variable name for our profile, followed by this format for displaying the name part of our object. Now if we come back into our browser and refresh our page, we can see that we're outputting Mike the Frog. So we know that in order to get something like their name, we're going to be using this format. Now let's try to do something like pull in their profile URL. We can come back to our code, copy and paste the code that we used before, and simply say profile URL. We can now see that we have the URL to their profile. Let's move on to something a little bit more complex and come in and try to display some badges. If we come down, we can see that we have an array inside of it that includes 227 of their badges. So we'll use the format of calling in the index value of the array object we're trying to get. Once we have that, we'll return to using the object format of pulling out the data and grab the name of the first badge. Let's come back into our code, copy what we have. We'll change profile URL to badges, call the first element of the array with an index of 0, and then we want to pull in the name of that particular object. When we refresh our page, we can see that we do have the correct information that we wanted. However, if we come down and look at courses associated with this, we can see that there aren't actually any courses associated with the newbie badge. The reason is because everybody gets this when they sign up and start at Treehouse. However, if we come down and look at our second badge for introduction, we could see that inside of courses, it has an array of 3 objects. The first one is the actual section that this badge displays in. If we copy the URL, we could see that this takes us into the library for everything related to building websites. This is really generic information which we probably won't display inside of our plugin. However, if we come down to the second part of the array and look at that URL, we could see that this is giving us the whole project in which this badge appears. This is a little more helpful to us and we'll actually end up using this data. However, it's really the last element in the array which displays the information for the actual stage that the badge is associated with. However, if we put this in, we can see that it takes us to the actual stage where you earn this particular badge. So, let's come back in, try pulling in the name of our second badge as well as the course and stage that it's associated with. To do this, we'll come back into our code and first change this to 1. From there, we could say that we're not actually trying to get the name of this badge, but rather what courses it's associated with. We then know that we could start pulling out the basic project information as well as the information for the specific stage. So inside of courses, we'll use the index of 1, which actually gets us the project name, and then we'll use title to get the title of that project. Now when we refresh our page, we could see that we have their name and the title of the course. At this point, we should have enough practice and be able to pull out whatever data we want from this profile feed. Just remember that if you're using an object, you use this format, and if you're looking at an array, you use this format. So what we have here is an object with an array, another object with another array, and then inside of yet another object. Let's take this information we've learned and apply it to our loop where we're displaying their actual badges. Let's start by looking at how to replace this image here. If we come back into our feed, we could see that if we're in the first badge, we can get the icon URL. Let's go back down to the code we wrote, pull out this, where we pull in our first course name, come in and remove the source code here, and paste in this new information. However, we're going to make a couple changes here. First of all, if we have their badges, we really want to map the index of that to the variable I, which will change as it loops through the loop. So we'll replace this with I, and then change courses to icon URL. And we could delete the rest of this information here. Now, when we come back and look in the browser and refresh it, we could see that we have all of the badges and their icons displayed just as we would imagine. Now let's go and look at how to display the badge name. We'll come down and copy our project name information and replace it in the badge name area. We'll update the first index to use the variable I. However, we still need to hard code the second index since the course information is always going to follow the same format of having the section, followed by the project, and finally the course. So what we really want is to get this third object with an index of 2. We'll come back to our code, and where it says courses 1, we'll replace this with 2, jump back into our browser, and see that now we have the proper name displaying. Next, we'll come back, and we could copy this that's already displaying the course project name, and simply change this value to I. We now have the proper information displaying here, and we could see that Forms belongs to HTML and Introduction belongs to CSS Foundations. However, it looks like we lost the name of this first badge. The reason for this is that we're actually pulling in the course information here and not just the name of the badge. Because this first badge has no courses associated with it, we can't rely on that data. So what we'll need to do is come back and pull in just the name of the badge instead of the third value inside of the courses array. So we'll come back up to this first section here and just change courses to name, come back, and we can see we now have the proper information.